In the last video, we looked at Julia, who has some future endowment and wants to borrow in order to consume something now so that she can make it into the future. We're going to contrast that now with Marco. So Marco has an endowment now, but nothing in the future. So obviously they're on two sides of a very similar coin. The difference being that Marco has something now that he can just hold on to, whereas Julia has nothing now and needs something to consume. So if we look at their two indifference curves, we can see that Marco's is going to be farther out because he has a current endowment, whereas Julia's is closer, so lower down because she has a future endowment. And so that's going to influence what their choices are, right? And there's really no difference between them. It's $100 in the future for Julia versus $100 for Marco now. But because Marco has his endowment now, he's in a much better position than is Julia. So if we think about Marco's options, there's could be a number of possible options. We'll talk about two of them here. One is that he could just hold on to it. Right now, depending on what his $100 is, right? If it's $100 worth of grain, it could be that the mice will eat $20 of it if he holds on to all of it for the future. If he holds it in cash, maybe there's some risk of him losing it or it being stolen. So here we have a 20% depreciation in the future. So he could consume all of it now, or he could consume none of it now and $80 in the future. If he does that, then his best point here is at point H. That's his highest indifference curve. That's where he will consume. On the other hand, he could lend some of that money out, maybe to Julia. And if the interest rate is 10%, then if he lends all of it out, he could consume nothing now and could consume $110 in the future. That's 100 plus the 10% interest. Or he could lend some of it in the future. And if he does that, then in this case, he would be able to consume 65 now and 39 in the future at point J, which is where his highest utility in this case is. So lending in this case expands the saver's feasible set. So now most people don't lend directly, right? They put money in a bank and earn interest on that. Not usually 10% interest, at least not these days. But they're able to earn that interest because the bank is then going to lend that money out and earn positive interest, which they pass on, at least in part, to their depositors. So lending expands the feasible set and a higher interest rate, positive 10% as opposed to negative 20% in this case, allowed Marco to consume more, whereas for Julia, a higher interest rate because she's borrowing allows her to consume less. And so that's an important distinction between borrowers and lenders. Another possibility is that Marco actually invests, right? Maybe he's got some productive idea that he can put that $100 into and earn 50% interest. In that case, he might be able to consume at point K, where he has $60 of consumption today and $60 of consumption in the future, right? So he's able to consume even more with this investment opportunity. Now, if he's very confident of this investment opportunity, he might say, hey, you know what I could do is I could actually borrow some more money because I have this $100. I can use that as collateral. I'll borrow some more, invest that. If I'm only paying 10% interest on what I borrow, but I'm earning 50% interest on my investment, then I can consume even more. And so that would be at point L, right, where he consumes 80 today and 62 in the future. Now, obviously, this comes with a little bit of risk, right? And so this type of analysis is not really able to analyze that risk, but that would be an important concept in real life. So if we now move from these investment opportunities, we want to think about a balance sheet, and then we're going to talk about the role of banks. And so just some terms that we need to know. Balance sheet is sometimes also called a T account, and it's called a balance because we put everything we own on one side over here. Those are our assets, and everything we owe on the other side, that's our liabilities. And then any difference between the two is our net worth, right? And so as long as our assets are larger than our liabilities, we have positive net worth. A company always has to have positive net worth because they have to be able to pay back all the debts that they owe to other people. A person, on the other hand, at least could have current negative net worth, but we could think of all of their future income as potential assets, which is why it might appear that a person has negative net worth. A bank's assets and liabilities are a little bit unusual. So we're going to walk through what a person has, and then we will compare that to a bank. So if we think about Julia, so if Julia borrows $58, then she has $58 of cash, right? The bank gave her $58 or the lender gave her $58, but she also owes $58 to whomever she borrowed the money from. So her net worth is still just zero. If she consumes with that $58, right, then now she has zero, but she still owes that loan of $58. So her net worth is minus 58, right? That's that negative net worth we talked about. Now in the future, we know Julia has $100, right? That's her endowment from the future. Maybe she worked and she earned $100. So now she has $100 of cash, but she still has to pay back the loan. And so now the loan is $64 because it's the $58 plus 10% interest, which is about $6. So she owes $64. So her net worth is $36. If she consumes that $36, then now she has cash of $64 to pay back her loan of $64, and her net worth is zero. So remember that one person's debt is always another person's asset, right? Because you owe it to somebody else. That's not necessarily true of an asset. You can own something without it being somebody's liability. So a bank is going to be a company, a firm that takes in deposits, right? Checking account deposits, savings account deposits, money market account deposits. They're going to pay some low amount of interest on those deposits to their depositors, and then they're going to lend out money to people who want to buy a house, who want to buy a car, to businesses, to credit card borrowers, and they're going to charge a higher interest rate on that so that the profit they make is the difference between the interest they earn from lending and the interest they pay on borrowing.